Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, Dr. Josh Coon. And I got to tell you, I was telling you off camera how excited I am for this conversation. You're a sports psychologist,
Yeah.
and you're also a professor of psychology. You're a coach. I'm trying to think of, all of the different hats and titles that you wear, but there's so many of them. And I'm so fascinated. It's interesting. I'll give you a little background, but I've been fascinated with psychology maybe my whole life. Like I love the power of the mind and, the way our brains work and all of that stuff. And then when we get to tie it into sports, I just geek out over it. So anyway, I just want to tee that up that I am so excited for the conversation and to be able to pick your brain and all of that. So where I want to start, if you don't mind, walk me through a little bit of your background. Cause I know that, you've got a really long resume, and we talked off camera that you're still currently a professor of psychology and doing the coaching thing, but walk me through how you got to where you are now from a professional perspective.
There's a lot of hats there. I'm actually trying to trim hats the last few years. Is it the you never know where some of these quotes originate, but it was McConaughey or somebody on one of the podcasts was like, you want to whole ass a few things and
not half-ass many things.
Yeah. So that's actually been the goal recently. But how did I get here professionally? I mean, it was running really. The basketball coach suckered me into it in 7th grade to start running. And then that just became this powerful thread. I was pretty good at it. I had great coaching in high school. It's not an exaggeration to say it probably saved my life in many respects, like with a rough upbringing, and they were like family. So then I got to college here at Fort Lewis. I didn't know what to study, but I liked running. So I was like, I'll just study exercise phys. And then, worked in the hospitals for a couple of years and had thought about pursuing medicine, but then in the hospitals kind of realized it was the people, it was the connection. It felt like so many ailments were not just physical. And so that led me to a master's in counseling, clinical counseling, not even convinced I wanted, more just out of curiosity, which drove my mom nuts. Most of everything I chose to do was really curiosity.
Love that.
Yeah. It was really like, this is the next interesting thing. And it's cool now. I can kind of look back and see pieces that fit together without almost trying, luckily. But so yeah, went to school for counseling. I worked in drug and alcohol rehab, in Denver. In there, I saw everyone from former Denver Broncos players to old CEOs to sort of maybe the stereotype people have of who's in rehab, everything in between, and saw how addiction could hit any one of us at some point, to, people who've had their whole everything and then lost it to addiction.
Right.
Yeah. And then I got distracted coaching. So I was working as a counselor for a bit there, but coaching high school, and then moved into the college ranks. And that distracted me for, 12, 13 years.
Just for a decade or so.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it was deeply meaningful, and my spouse was more patient than she should have been, probably. So shout out Kayla, the real hero behind all my endeavors. College coaching, and then started a doctorate at the same time. So that's why she's the real hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of many hats,
like, it's absurd actually to look, or just, like looking, you're like, I wouldn't recommend anybody try and do all that at once. So, coaching was deeply meaningful. It took me, all over the country, around the world.
When you were coaching there and you said your doctorate, that was when you started pursuing the doctorate in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Sports psych. Yeah.
Okay. What triggered that? Were you seeing a need for it as a coach, or what, or was it a personal kind of continual improvement thing?
It just sounded interesting.
Yeah. A curiosity thing.
Yeah. It was still curiosity. Yeah. It was coaching, and I was like, this make me a better coach. Maybe I could teach someday. Really, there was no pressing need to go get a doctorate. And with the way knowledge is democratized now, I'm not sure that model will last forever.
Yeah, we could have a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, like there's like, I mean, we have access to a lot of that stuff used to be locked up in the academy, and now it's easy to find. Now sometimes we can't filter through what's real and what isn't.
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah, so that was a long journey, slow journey, because coaching was demanding, and then having kids, and but it was, I added a couple men's and women's track at Colorado Christian University, and then I got men's track added at Fort Lewis, and so I'm pretty proud of those. And
the program itself?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. How cool.
So yeah, those were practice was awesome. The bureaucracy and the things of higher ed, even teaching has that too, but
right.
I'll be gentle here. But the bureaucracy is, and just coaching, the only way to coach really well is to, you got to put a lot into it. So,
yeah. You got to be all in.
So yeah, it was time for that chapter to end, and full-time professor now. And then a couple of years ago was asked to start working with some high-level runners, professional runners. And slowly I haven't done any marketing, which is kind of fun. Although I probably should. I should talk to you.
I was just say we could talk.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It's the whole reason I got you here, just to sucker you into a sales bit. No.
I've grown to see the need to market yourself. Yeah. But also just that desire to not put on too many hats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to say I was burnt, but also, I'd done so many hats for so long that it's like, I want to play catch with my kid.
Right.
And that's, I don't want to sacrifice that before you know it, they're 18.
And it flies.
Yeah.
I've got a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a almost 3-year-old.
Oh, fun.
And it is, I was with my 7-year-old the other day, and I'm like, time is a thief.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like overnight since I became a dad, and now he's 7. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, walk me back. You talked about, because I'm fascinated. One of the reasons I'm so fascinated to talk to you is about that intersection of, sports and psychology, specifically in the running world.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated. You had that little anecdote of when you started running, you found running. I think you said accidentally or something like that early on, and that it saved your life, or the coach did, or something there. Can you elaborate on that for me? Like your experience with running early on? Yeah.
It was, our basketball coaches were pretty harsh, and the running coaches were so optimistic. They believed in you. Not that they didn't have standards or anything, but there was just this different, they made it so attractive, and then made it such a family environment, and like made it, and where I like just believed in myself, which I wasn't quite getting at home or in other places. And so, I think of those years as like, just, I just remember so many races, like high school. I don't know. It was really powerful. So I think that thread has kept running, or it showed me like what a sport could do. Like, it's not, obviously it's big business. It's March Madness, or that's almost the end of March Madness. Yeah. It's like, kind of a rat race too, but like, there's so many powerful stories, through human movements. And I think that's always been my goal, is just to like be a part of those stories. It's been really like, I work with these pro runners now and help. I always say my job is to make their coach's life easier, but like, it's not even that exciting when they run well for me. Like now I'm like interested in like, what did they overcome? And like,
like the adversity and what challenge did we solve?
Like the race 6 months before where, you'd towed the line, even though you'd had this really awful thing the day before. Those are the like stories that are like, that's like what gets me into it.
Yeah. Me too.
Because you got to have a bunch of those to get to the Olympics, or to.
Yeah, you have to stack a ton of bad races before you have a good one. Or you could be like me, who just thinks that everyone's going to be good and so far has no good races. It's like every time I'm like, man, if I just had, A, B, and C go differently, I'm like, that'll happen. And then of course it's, X, Y, and Z go wrong. And you're like, gosh, dang it. Well, if I can just piece it all together one time.
A lot has to go right in an ultra.
A lot has to go right.
Yeah.
In fact, the only thing guaranteed is that it won't all go right.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of which ones are going to go wrong to,
Yeah.
to help piece it all together. But
Yeah.
no, so because it sounds like, you kind of like lived that world before formally, studying it and helping out on the other side of it. Talk to me about that and like how that's impacted your approach now as a coach or even a professor. Like having the benefit of seeing firsthand, I think you said that, human movement and what that did and stuff like that. Like, does those experiences pull into your approach nowadays?
It definitely, oh yeah. I mean, I'm a psychology professor, but I feel like they get a bunch of health and movement, like health psych and like, really they get some exercise phys too.
Right.
But like, I think one of psychology as a specific discipline's greatest weaknesses has just been ignoring what the body can do for you, like proactive moves. And there's been the last 20 years, the positive psychology movement's been trying to address that, what's right with the person. And it's getting a little more holistic and less take this pill and go away, not that it's not always that simple, but yeah. And some people do need a prescription or at some point, but I think a lot of people are clamoring, and my students are too, for like a different answer than and so like I'll just be like, let's go walk for 20 minutes and then we'll try and do talk about this topic, and then we'll reflect on just what did that walk do. Like the 20-minute walk is so underrated.
Tell me more about that. The connection with movement and psychology.
Or I'll have them. I don't make it assignments anymore. I'll just do big extra credit, or we'll just go do it in class. And I've had people reflect and been like, it got me thinking that maybe my relationship is unhealthy. I should break up with this guy, and like, or they're like, I called my mom and we made up, and like, or gosh, I just felt good for the first time. Like just these 20-minute walks that I do with my classes.
Why? What about that unlocks those mental? Like, what? Educate me on maybe it's the science or the theory, but the connection between how movement like that can kind of, because it sounds like it unlocks mental barriers or breakthroughs or clarity. I don't know what we'd want to call it, but walk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the fMRIs of the brain waking up and the different regions lighting up, but
through exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just through even 20-minute walks. Like, but I think also we're not designed to be sedentary creatures. Like we didn't evolve that way. We moved for tens of thousands of years, and then the last 50 years shut it down. Like, generally. And I'm not I don't have an overarching theory worked out on this, but it does seem to be low-hanging fruit to help solve a lot of problems, and if not, at least feel better about the approach to the problems.
Right.
Yeah. Like it isn't going to make your day worse.
No, I've never regretted going on a run.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because my runs for me are almost meditative.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say that they are meditative.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like if I have a big problem I need to solve or something's bothering me or whatever, I'll go on a run. And it's the weirdest thing because I just kind of will let my mind go, and sometimes I've learned I have to sometimes be a little bit careful about it. Like if something's upset me, I can like latch onto it, and it can be
I can run.
Overthink it. Yeah. But also if I'm careful about it and let my mind wander, like if I'm in my life, and I'm no scientist, but where I've found the best benefit if I'm trying to solve a problem. Like if I've got a dilemma at work I've got to make, or like a big decision at the company or whatever, and I'll go run about it is what I say. Like I think I'll run about it. Yeah. It's crazy because it unlocks the mind in such a, like it definitely does.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And you're thinking that maybe some of it's just because of that we're meant to move.
Yeah. We had to forever.
Yeah.
It was survival. we talk a lot. I think historical context is kind of frames psychology, and well, everything's new really the last 100 years. Everything's
Yeah.
Our great grandparents lived a very different existence than us, but and they were moving, and so we've just sat down and correlation isn't causation, but it seems like there's a pretty strong correlation between getting sedentary and mental health issues going through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh. Because,
yeah.
You think about like in the span of humanity, like we're a blip. You know what I mean? Like this lifestyle that we're all living is like remarkably new.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, I don't even know how I would term it in terms of percentages or, like how much of humanity is, it's with technology and, our how we work with computers and stuff like that. Yeah. I wonder, because and that's where you've kind of started to incorporate just even like as simple as walking for.
Yeah. And cell phone fasts and like, I'm trying to make psych intro, everyone has to take intro to psych in college, or it seems like the advisor always shuffles everyone to it.
I'm actually, that's a good thing. I didn't know that, but that's good.
Yeah. And it can get pretty theory heavy and pretty, just not useful in my opinion. So, or we'll do cell phone fasts and tech fasts and things like that. And it's things everyone kind of knows they need. And then just trying to give my students permission to turn off.
Tell me about
or go move. Yeah. Or actually with a few athletes too, pro runners.
That statement you just said there, that was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Things that everyone knows they need. Unpack that. Like as it relates to a cell phone fast or a technology fast or whatever.
Yeah.
Things that everyone knows they need.
I mean, there's definitely a general understanding that we should probably all move, eat a little healthier, get off our like the phone one. I think everyone, if we're looking for something pretty much everyone knows and we know they're not that healthy in a divided world. That's like one thing I think everyone kind of agrees on.
Right.
The phone is not making things too much better.
No.
I wish I could give credit to where I'm not, but someone likened it to like cigarettes. In the 70s through 90s, I remember as a kid, you had smoking, non-smoking sections, and which is hilarious to think about in the 90s. Here, smoking sections right there. But everyone kind of knew they were bad for you, but everyone was still smoking. And then through public health initiatives and taxing and these campaigns, we kind of, and social stigma started and you can maybe see some. So I feel like cigarettes are phones are the new cigarettes.
Yeah.
But you're starting to maybe see some of that dam break, like with some stigma, I've been to people's place where like put phone in the basket or, there's more conversation at least about what are these things doing to us. And like, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like we're not designed to have all the world's info like flashing for us right before bed,
Yeah. One thing, I wonder if you've studied it or if you've had read any studies or anything like that. Because I want to talk about the phone thing. I want to talk more about sports psychology, but now you got me on the phone thing for a minute. So let's touch on it for a minute. But I'm about halfway through The Comfort Crisis. I don't know if you've read the Comfort Crisis book or not. It's so good. I highly recommend it. I'm almost done with it. But one of the things he talks about is that one thing that humans don't experience anymore is boredom.
Yeah.
And how important it is, like, to let our minds wander and be bored and whatever. And I was thinking about that, like the instant, and I mean the literal instant that we're a little bit bored, what do we do?
Yeah.
And think about what we're robbing ourselves of.
Yeah.
Like so I had a quick anecdote and then I have a question about phones, but I go camping with my boys sometimes, and there's a place in Moab. It's called Cane Creek, and I purposefully camp down at the bottom of there.
No cell service.
Because there's no cell service.
Yeah.
And what I've experienced is, and I know you've got kids too, but it's wild because my dynamic with my kids is different. And granted, it might be because I'm camping. Like, there's other variables.
Totally.
But the best way I've described it is micro moments. Like that when I don't have my phone and when I'm camping in Cane Creek, it's literally in the backpack. Like I don't even have it.
Yeah.
And there's all these like quick interactions with my kids that I have that break my heart to think that I'm missing those elsewhere. Like these little things that turn into conversations or like the little moment or the little like head nod even or the acknowledgement or whatever. And it has forced me to self-reflect in a huge way about how I am with my phone, you know, with my kiddos.
Yeah.
So anyway, but one of the things I'm curious about is you kind of talked about like the social stigma. And I know that you get to work with a unique demographic with what are college students now? Is that Gen Z?
Yeah.
Gen Zers.
Yeah.
Do they have a different relationship with their phones than we do? If so, is it better or worse? Or is it the same?
I mean, are you a millennial?
I'm a millennial.
Okay. Yeah. So we kind of got tech like halfway through.
Right.
Thank God. I feel privileged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through college without a smartphone.
Yeah.
I got my first smartphone, the summer after graduating.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. When I talk about it to them, they're just like, what? Like you just made plans and you stuck to it or you didn't, you know? But I think they recognize that there was a phone free world. They talk about it and that all of us are kind of longing for it. And like they, you know, almost all of them have been on this, you know, they've had somebody, send something nasty or some sort of, I have friends in education, they deal with cyber issues all the time, you know, and my students talk about that too, maybe bullying or photo, you know, like there's kind of this understanding, like they know that it's not, you know, maybe not at least not aiding life. But,
yeah. So do we though.
Yeah, we do.
Are they making are you seeing a shift with them or not yet?
No, but there's dialogue for sure.
Okay.
There's really vulnerable dialogue where they're like, get open about it.
Yeah.
I just talked to him. I just finished The Anxious Generation, where he specifically talks about what it's doing to youth and what kind of turned around 2012 when smartphones hit kids, and has some great recommendations for, but it whether we're talking students or like athletes, like it robs us of our ability to direct our attention, or, you know, like I'm working on it too. Like it sucks when you feel like you probably missed something with your kids or, so, you know, I'm in the thick of trying to figure out my own, cause it's, they're a little, like they've made us all into addicts, essentially.
Yeah, literally. I'm trying to remember where I learned it, but a behavior of mine I'm not proud of that I've noticed is that I get agitated with my kids easier when I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
And I learned that it's because they're literally disrupting my addiction.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, like but it helps me wrap my head around it. Like, cause I don't want to be an agitated dad.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want to be short or anything like that. And it's because I've got this stupid dopamine hit from the thing in my pocket.
Yeah.
And understanding that has helped me at least know the relationship with it and why I'm more agitated when I have it around. Yeah. So I'm trying so hard. Like I'm doing social media free Sundays and
cool. Yeah.
Put it on loud when I get home and like on the dresser. So that way, like if somebody calls, I can go check it, you know, I'm not like, but then I'm not just like, cause I just scroll and I think we all do. It's fascinating. I'm curious. It'll probably be the generation after Gen Z that actually makes a change. I'm speculating.
Yeah.
But it has to be saturated enough, I think, for them people to like.
I mean, our dissatisfaction will probably have to, or there might be like, you know, with smoking, we saw it catching up with people getting really sick.
Right.
So maybe our pain or dissatisfaction threshold has to change. And
it's probably like, you know, how, we always want to be a little bit better than our parents.
Yeah.
Like we want to, probably it's a generation that has to grow up with their parents on a phone.
Yeah.
To then realize that I'm going to put mine down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that is, but I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Sorry for the sidebar with the phones.
No,
it's so hard
it's important
to put them down. Yeah. So are your kids, are your students, is there a resistance when you're doing a phone fast or a tech?
I don't make it an assignment. But I'd rather incentivize it and make them to make the choice to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, they're almost always really want permission to like, or a reason to go turn off or go move, like,
Right.
oh, I gotta go get some extra credit, you know?
And it's because of, like you said, it's these things that we all know we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about that as it relates to movement and like exercise and, sports.
Yeah. About like phones and our attention.
No, the things we know we're supposed to be doing.
Oh, okay.
Like that idea of, I don't know. Because what I'm getting at is I feel like so much of it it's natural if we let it be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so easy. The dopamine snack. I call them dopamine snacks. Like when we're scrolling, and then we talk about like, if you're snacking all day, how do you feel? You feel bloated, kind of disgusted with yourself. But then we talk about like, what is a really satisfying project when they were on a team, when did you have to work for something? And it's like deep seated dopamine then, or like there's sacrifice, there's pain, and movements kind of requires that almost every time, like you don't get it cheap. You have to earn it every time. So we're taking the low hanging fruit, I think, with what we have, and it makes movement less appealing when you get easy dopamine snacks. Like,
right. Yeah. But I love how you framed that, a dopamine snack versus a dopamine meal.
Yeah. That you have to prepare and work on and like take time, and like it doesn't come easy. I always use the example of like, if say it's late in the day now, right? We're like, maybe we had a long day. Let's stop by the store and grab a cake or something. That's gonna be fairly satisfying. But if we had a long day and we talked to our spouse on the way home, and your spouse or friend or roommate makes you your favorite cake for an hour, like, what is the layer of depth to that that's different? Like, it's an entirely different experience. Like, buying the cake costs a little money, not much time. And it's sad, it was good, but like, there's a depth to sacrifice. Yeah. And like getting after a meaningful project, what's kind of cool about San Juan College is a lot of them are, like, it's a big deal that they're in college. A lot of them in college, like blue collar, working class. So like, it's graduation there was like the most intense graduation I've seen, because a lot of them have overcome so much.
Yeah. I love that.
So same with movement. Like it requires overcoming. Like fitness is earned. It's not handed out.
Right.
Like, whereas our entertainment and our feel good, all the feel good chemicals are kind of handed out now.
Yeah. Do our brains know the difference? Like, is there, because when you explain it like that with a snack versus a meal, it makes so much sense to me. Like, I call it real dopamine versus fake dopamine, even though it's, it's the same, but because I'm curious, like for people listening, or if they're like, looking for a guide, or like, a checklist or whatever of like, if it's a meal versus a snack, because do our brains tell the difference? And like how, it sounds like effort and, ease of accomplishment and stuff like that. But walk me through the differences with our brains, because it definitely feels different, but it's the same chemical and the same.
Yeah. I mean, if you go make that cake, or somebody else sacrifices to make you that cake, like, and you put in the time and energy, and you've been practicing your baking skill, like there's definitely a different layer of depth to that than there is to picking one up.
That our brains can recognize.
On the surface, I don't know if it recognizes it. I'd have to dig into that a little more.
Yeah.
But I think we know that there's a depth there that is not handed, that's different than the snack.
Have you ever heard about people doing dopamine detoxes?
Yeah. Trying to be present, be bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walk me through that. What's the define what a dopamine detox is, and like if there's actual benefit to it.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, it seems with the movement towards meditation too, and like this is sort of going back to like that threshold of we're realizing this isn't great, so we're having detox where you get off of cheap dopamine, especially, and you get camping dopamine where you're out playing, hiking, climbing, jumping, and then there's definitely I'll do guided meditations in class, and they're like, this is maybe that's the one. I mean, the phones have tons of capacity for good or bad, but the meditation apps are actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we got to hand it to a lot of those on that, and that's been really appealing. I've had students be like, I'm meditating every day. So there's definitely like maybe we're hitting a tipping point. I don't know. This is small sample size, one college. But even with some of these pro runners that I do consulting with, the themes aren't that different. These are powerful little machines, and they're demanding our attention. And so maybe the tide's going to break on that. But yeah, so longer term detoxes, boredom. Height's book, he talks about the importance of play for kids and just free play, unstructured play. And that's, that's probably more real kind of honest dopamine, I guess.
Yeah. Just maybe, and that's mostly what that is like avoiding the cheap dopamine, as you put it. Yeah. Maybe not a detox, but like giving room for the real stuff.
Yeah. Where you can, get a sunburn and scrape your knees or
right.
Yeah. Or practice a craft, like we talk about like the satisfaction of, like learning a song or getting better at basketball. Like they all know this. So it definitely seems really present in Gen Z's sphere. Like what is, they're very self-aware.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that's the flood of information and phones and
I don't know. Which, speaking of the good and the bad, I mean, there's so many. I mean, it's like everything. I think we need to be more intentional about how we use it, not necessarily like cut it out or whatever. But like, I mean, even with social media, you can be it's such a slippery slope. Like even algorithmically, if you start consuming crappy content, you're going to get served more of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It sends it right back.
Yeah. But if you start consuming like motivational and inspirational and like uplifting content, you'll get served more of that. And like, there's probably, there's so many of those balances things.
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit and start talking about the people that you work with, and your role as as a coach and, all these, we talked about all the different hats that you wear, but specifically you work with a lot of runners and pro runners. I'm curious, cause it's interesting. You always think about like psychology as, I don't know. Like I rarely think of like high performers, benefiting from psychological help, but I'm curious, my first question with it is are there common, like, you work with many athletes. I mean, you've coached teams and, individuals and whatever. Are there common struggles that athletes deal with, with the mental side of things? Like what are some of the most common ones?
Yeah. We picture the pros as kind of Superman, right? Superwoman.
Like I think what I just was watching Ashley Paulson. I don't know if you know her or not, but she just won the Buffalo Run 100.
Okay.
10 days ago, and then this Saturday ran a marathon. I'm like, how in the world? So, but I'm over here thinking that they don't even hurt when they're running, but I know that's not the case.
And they make it look effortless. Yeah. And the interviews.
Well, I'm like literally twice as slow.
Yeah. So no question. That was. I've been spending time around the Brooks Beast team for some time, but started working with athletes year and a half ago, and then just started with some of the Hoka and AZ Elite. And it was smaller sample size, but race anxiety common, sort of findings. And if they've made it to that level, they've had some pretty solid.
They've done some things right.
Yeah, they've no question. And so sometimes it's just tweaking or what worked before. I'm really strengths based. a lot of times we just need to be reminded what we're good at.
Mm.
I mean, we trend towards cynicism so easily. I think culturally, even it's kind of in the everyday ethos, and that affects them the same way it affects a first gen college student or young runner. I only coach I have a few private runners, but because I'm more focused on the sports side consulting, and
Right.
and so it's this fun puzzle where I get to put together my counseling hat, my coaching hat, my just understanding of psychology, my psychology hat here. Yeah.
Speaking of trimming hats.
Yeah.
And then you wear all four at once.
Yeah. And that's what I've been told has helped me do well, because I can look at things from different angles with them, or help them problem solve, or, like I've twice in my career, I was counseling couples in practice. And so, understanding the nature of their job and high performance work, and then also like a decent understanding of like couples work, which I always thought was fun. Maybe because I like teams and energy, and a lot of therapists don't like it, but so yeah, be able to put these pieces together. But anxiety's a common one, just navigating family, friend issues. It's similar to us. I mean, they're
normal people, you mean?
Totally. Yeah. But I think they've got a few tools that maybe they learned, or were some definitely were inherent early, or like, they were kind of a dog early, and just their self-belief was through the roof, and
right.
Some of us had to work on that for,
still are.
Yeah. They might be able, I think they might be able to hold that self-belief longer, which has helped them get to that level. But off the top of my head, I feel like anxiety and just normal people struggles.
Right.
Just the neighbor, the breakup, and but it's a high performance job too. Like it's, I tell them all the time, like, you don't really get to turn off at that level, because they're paying you to hit this standard, and they take 2 or 3 weeks off, the lifestyle, the bed, the recovery, so I think processing some of that is maybe a demand. That's a different demand, I guess, but processing that's where I was going. Like the normal family things in light of having a high performance job.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that idea of self-belief. What commonalities or trends have you seen in terms of high performers, and talk to me about like the impact of self-belief on performance.
Yeah. There's like this, I'm broad brushing here, but some of the best runners that I've encountered or worked with have kind of a silly self-belief, like absurd high level of self-belief. But then when you pair that with some level of humility too, and don't see them as contradictory, like it's sort of paradox, like you hold them both in each hand. So running's cruel. Like you can get, especially at their level, thousands or hundredths of a second can determine
right
paychecks and renewals and, careers. So they hold those both kind of intent, like they've all been humbled, they've all lost, but they've also have won a lot and have a lot of self-belief. And then like, they hold those two kind of in tension well, I guess I'd say. But the self-belief, I think, was the thing that first struck me as like on paper here as fans, we'd be like, I don't think you're going to win that. And like, I'm going to win that,
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, well, okay. I've got a few questions on self-belief. First one would be, have you ever seen somebody without self-belief highly perform? Like, can high performance exist without self-belief?
I mean, genetics is real. So I think some genetics carries some people pretty far. Like some people's verticals are different than ours, or, so that's a great question. So yeah, I can think of a few that, who even made it pretty far and then have to, based on talent, um, like, God gave him some Achilles tendons that were a little more efficient,
Right.
and, the ability to, their running economy, their ability to pump blood, they're made a little. And so I've seen that where then they have to work on the, they're full of self-doubt, but their body has carried them. And then, I can think of a few where, we're doing some work with some real anxiety work, some real like imposter syndrome work, some like, I don't belong, at that level where you are literally getting paid to do it.
Right.
And so, yeah, at first glance, it feels like they shouldn't need sports psych work. They're like in the top itty bitty percentage. But there's other variables as to how they got there, and like how, but also they're all clamoring to get that 10th of a second edge.
Yeah.
So if the real honest ones who I really respect, who are like, I've been avoiding this issue for 5 years, and, I've done well even with this glaring hole in my psyche. And I respect them so much. I think it's just cool when you're at that level and you can say, I got to work on this.
Right.
Or, I got to work on my relationship or my family stuff, or in some insecurity that's held on since age 12. Like it's, I don't know. It's so they're human. Yeah. Back to our point. Yeah.
Right. How do you develop self-belief?
The self-efficacy, self-belief literature that it can be a vicarious or like positive experiences. So you start doing well. I think that's how I got it. I was a decent runner early, and other people's belief. I'm blanking on a couple of the things that help grow self-efficacy. Those are the first two that come to mind, though. You get some quality feedback, some care, and those are the core two that I remember.
Because I'm curious, like one of the things, putting on my dad hat, like one of the things I want to teach my kids is confidence and self-belief and like all that, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be taught, like, but there's a fine line, because like you also don't want to set them up for failure. You know what I mean? And like put them in a situation where they, like, it's so fragile. I feel like of like, accidentally hurting their self-esteem or their confidence, and like, but letting them grow and build the confidence and the self-esteem and stuff like that. I don't know if you have any insider thoughts just of like even where that line lives, whether it's a 7-year-old kid or an elite runner, but like, that fine line of like outside of your comfort zone enough to grow and build some self-belief, but not fully, not fail.
Yeah.
Or maybe fail. I don't know. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, we, to get to that high level, like, well, then you have the next challenge. And so your self-belief is going to be put, can I meet the next, and it only gets tougher.
Right.
With our kids though, that's like, I mean, my wife and I feel like we roll that around a lot. Like, how much do we want to push and let them fail? I mean, you think you want them to fail at some level, and get back up. Certainly, we've definitely said get back up. Like, I've got 10 and 12-year-olds, and like, nope. Like, or you decided to do this, or
we're gonna see it through.
Yeah. And then now I can think of a few instances where they really love that activity,
right?
And they're ready to quit it.
Right.
I mean, quality coaching and I think feedback helps a lot too. Sometimes us parents become loud noise, but then like one of my kids' Little League coaches says something, I'm like, I've said that.
Yeah. But it has to come from someone other than you.
Yeah, it's another voice.
Right.
So yeah, thinking that the self-belief, if we're goal driven, I think we're gonna, and we set the next goal, there's gonna be some level of doubt
at each step.
Yeah. Like, can I do this? Am I capable? And trusted people feedback, getting some traction, doubling down on strengths. Like I said, I'm huge. I feel like we need to talk about strengths more. Nobody wants to talk about their strengths.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I forget how you worded it, but you said that you're something focused. Maybe it was strength focused or, something like that. Talk to me about that, what that is and why. Why are you focusing on that?
Just because maybe it's cultural, I'd be curious your thought too, just trend towards cynicism. I feel like I have to fight it off in myself, and I quite often, and maybe we could circle back to the phones or all the, all the negative, everything that the amount of information we're consuming. And, if you're looking at war footage before bed, like how can that's a lot.
Right.
And so no matter what level I've worked at, whether it's like, coaching high school, college athlete, like we're really quick to do to know what we're bad at and not like what we're good at. And so it's a hard question I'll ask, even some of these runners or college kids before, like, what are you good at? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, what would somebody else say you're good at? Then they can,
and you reframe it like that.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, my buddy told me I'm good at this. And then we start getting some traction and like, what do other people, say? And so it just feels like a glaring hole in a lot of our conversations and a lot of our
it's so fascinating because I even to tie it in with the parenting thing, but like it's so easy to focus on the areas where what we're bad at. And I'm trying to think of, it might have been a Jordan Peterson thing, but that you're not supposed to try to take something that your kids are bad at and make them good at it. You're supposed to find something they're good at and make them great at it.
Yeah.
Like find the strengths and lean into them hugely because that's what makes them unique. That's what makes them them, like all those good things.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we're like, but they're bad at XYZ. So let's pour our resources into that. Let's pour our effort into it. Let's try to get that up to, standard or the threshold level where they're good at something else. Yeah. We ignore it. And it's like, man, if we could, and I guarantee it's the same with athletes. It's so fascinating to think about, like, to what an interesting exercise for if any, somebody listening or athlete to like actually think about the stuff that they're good at.
Yeah.
And then how can, leverage that? Because when you're thinking about improvement, whether it's personal or athletic or whatever, the default is the things I'm bad at, I need to get better at.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when I've been counseling heavier, I would always, what works? Like, what is working here? Let's start there.
Right.
Usually it hasn't even come to mind.
Right.
Yeah. Because if they're going to counseling there, it's for a reason. And
well, yeah, because we're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, there's usually some low hanging fruit on like, that's just, well, you're good at X and Y. Let's try and attack the Z problem with that.
Right. Yeah. Do more of X and Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Double down on that. Yeah. That's the positive psychology movement, the last 20 years, which is different than self-help. Positive psych's like an academic discipline. And it's been more about like what's right with the person and what fosters well-being and what fosters happiness at some level. There's people that research, what works, rather, because before psychology was very much what's broken.
Right.
And what's diagnosable, what's the problem. And so I think that's what works is such a powerful quote. What is working here?
I love it.
It's such a good frame
for
a lot of things.
So many things. Gosh, business, relationships, personal endeavors, parenting. Like, even just having that, like, that's such a takeaway from this conversation for me is that, like, looking at what works, looking at the strengths, looking at what's already working and how we can leverage that. I'm telling you, we pour our resources into the stuff that's broken, which sometimes maybe is necessary.
Sometimes no question,
but we ignore the things that are working.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you actually sit down and
it's so crazy to think about it.
Yeah. And I have to do this, like, this is very personal. I think I trend towards cynicism. So I feel like I've dug into this a lot to try and, because I don't like that. Like it's exhausting. It goes nowhere.
Right.
It's just another I don't know, lost voice in the outrage machine. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it doesn't make me better with my kids or spouse or a better teacher or.
Right. No nothing good is coming from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. So like, all right, what works? Where's momentum happening? You know, what can I, what have I done before? You know, what in this sort of, another good reframe is the one, like, what, if you were a friend advising you, how would you advise you? So like pulling ourselves out like up here and
treating ourselves like somebody we care for.
Yeah. How would you advise? Because we got to get out of our own heads sometimes, or get out of, and cynicism just comes, it seems to me it comes easily for a lot of our culture. At the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
And myself too. So.
You talk about on your website, I think you've got it worded as optimal mental self or optimal mental state or something like that. Can you describe for me what that looks like? Like if somebody's in their optimal mental state, whether it's going into a job interview or towing the line before a race or whatever, like walk me through what that looks like.
Yeah. That'll look a little, I don't want to say it's contextual. That's always the easy out. It depends on the context. But for each individual, that is going to look a little differently. Like what has happened recently? What have they been overcoming? What's the nature of the race? Is it a low stakes race, a high stakes race? What's the goal here, with the race? So, my big goal when I'm consulting is I'm not the coach. I always tell them, like, I'm here to make your coach's life easier.
Right.
So like go talk to coach about, you guys got to get clarity first, and then we can talk about your mental about what the point of it is. And then we can figure out your stuff in light of that context of what you two agree on. So, but that optimum state, you want to frame it within like what's realistic for them to accomplish, but also if you're swinging for big goals, what level of risk do you want to engage in? We talk a lot about risk with some of these runners, and the nature of it, and when do you want to swing big and when do you not? And that's not an easy question. A lot of them have been swinging big their whole life.
Yeah.
But it's when you're getting paid, it's you need some level of results too.
Right.
Yeah. So that optimal state is, for each person, they'll have to, I always talk to them about like, we're co-creating here. Like I don't want to be, if we're talking narrative, like they're the hero of their journey, and I'm going to try and be a guide. Like, I don't want to be the guy in the picture or the, even the coach anymore. Like I want to like help them unlock what they have or what's already in there. So like, I talk like, let's co-create, like what is realistic? What is your A, B, and C goal? What have you and coach come up with, and then if they're talking to me, it's usually because they're trying to solve a deeper problem.
Yeah. Right.
So knowing the larger context is important, and then we can come up with sort of their optimal.
What impacts have you seen? Like, cause you've touched a few times on like those life problems.
Yeah.
Like they're not sport problems. They're not running problems. They're life problems.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how those impact though athletic performance and like things that you've seen, once they get solved or dealt with or whatever, like what, solving life problems and the impact on performance. What does that look like?
Oh, it's like you and me, like, only, theirs is a little more exposed to the world, and maybe it affects their job a little differently. So once you resolve maybe a breakup or I've seen a few of those, or maybe if you've been in a relationship for any decent amount of time, you're going to have low seasons and you're gonna have to work through some things, and they do as well. So I think that's where my experience with the couples has been very useful, actually, with a decent amount of these athletes, because like I've actually decently versed in that world. I wouldn't say I'm a great relationship there, or But at least can like, no, I think I was okay at that. Going back to our saying what we're good at.
Right. Yes.
I think I was better at that than some things, than some presenting issues. So yeah, I mean, they've got more on the line and almost need it fixed sooner. I'm not saying we all don't, but like if you got a contract renewal coming up and you got a string of bad races and your relationships in the toilet, so I'm broad brushing here, but that would you'd want to figure out some things quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Why? Because why? What is the impact on? Is it because it frees up the space for the performance and the focus on it, or do you think that it like actually is holding people back during? Because a lot of times people use an athletic endeavor as the escape.
Yeah. Or you run angry. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
It's like fuel or whatever. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean,
maybe that kind of ties into that optimal mental state too. Of like, what are we? What's fueling the fire, and how are we? I don't know. Like how that all kind of ties in together with once it's time to perform.
I mean, anger or frustration can be a great fuel. It burns hot though, and it's not as good long term. Because you're drawing on it and it runs out faster than like a more positive source of fuel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all of us have performed on days where maybe we had a bad night before with our spouse, kid, friends, whatever. We've had to go show up to work the next day, right? And some of them do that too, no question. But it's the sort of thing where if it doesn't, you don't move that back towards homeostasis, it'll show up eventually.
Yeah.
In lost sleep and stress hormones, cortisol levels, they're very wary of stress at that level.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that makes perfect sense. Because if you're stressed, you're probably not sleeping well. So you're probably not recovering properly,
Yeah.
Who knows if you're fueling properly, all that stuff too. Yeah.
And half a second could be 4 places from.
Right. That's why I'm glad I stick with the long distances. Yeah. At least we're dealing with hours,
Yeah.
Not half a second.
It's so high pressure. And yeah, I feel like such a so honored to be on like big ass goals like that. Can we cuss here?
Yep. It's a safe space.
Yeah. Like they're big ass goals in there. It's such fine lines. So it really makes me want to like give them the best quality I can.
Right.
Or refer out if I can't.
Right. You talked about anger as a fuel that it burns hot though.
Yeah.
What's the bet when you're looking at like your best success stories or the, I don't know, the best athletes that you've worked with, they kind of have it figured out or whatever. What in your world or your perspective has been the best sources of fuel or motivation or, like when in running, we call it our why, or whatever, but what have you found is the ideal, source of fuel, so to speak, mental fuel?
Yeah. One thing I do with most of them is sort of this values exercise. And I got this out of some existential literature somewhere on like reflecting on the end of your life or the end of your career. Like, what did you accomplish? How did you accomplish it? Did you do it with character, integrity, and like, so I try and get them to, or we'll write down like, who do you want to be when you retire from your career here? And then maybe you go even farther. Like it gives you sort of a North Star of this is why I'm doing it. This is what I want to accomplish. This is how I want to accomplish it. And I think it directs the why changes. It can change for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have core whys, honoring our family or honoring maximizing what our body can get out of itself. And that overlaps with values. So I try and get them to think like, all right, what is, where do I want to go? Like as a human too, I tell them like, not even as a runner, like who do you want who do you want to be in 10 years? The running careers are not that long.
Yeah.
Pro track careers.
Yeah.
So you got to have something that also direct, you're not a runner and then a human separately. Like they're synonymous.
Right.
Yeah. So like what would be satisfying at that point in 10, 15 years? And then let's work our way backwards. Like, what are your values? Like who at this point, they might be a little different in a year or two, but like, and then we come up with maybe cues or integrate that into pre-race routines. And then their core, they're like who they want to be values, rather than just a temporary cue to get them up for that race. Or, I'm very existential psychology is one of my favorite subdisciplines. Just is the why, that there's got to be something a little more to all of this, whether it's God or not God. There's those two lines in the existential world. But finding meaning in what we do. And so, we talk a decent amount about like where, you can't control the other competitors. So like how else is this meaningful? How else is this values oriented? How else can you, because if it's only the placing, you're gonna be disappointed a lot. Right. So there's got to be other sort of North Stars to direct you to where you can put your head on the pillow in 10, 15 and be like, this was satisfying, or I got to I got the most out of my body.
It's almost like putting defining success on something other than the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like finding a bigger definition of success or meaning or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And because these athletes have always been at the top, but then when you get to the pro level, everyone's
at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you need a little more nuanced version. They're competitors. They're like, they've gotten so many first, second, third place,
Right.
So it's, I think, a little shocking in where you can get imposter syndrome or get like, do I belong when you're at the top of the food chain, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Small fish in a big pond instead of a big fish in a small pond.
And I'd imagine other disciplines have this challenge too. Once you move, or other careers, other areas, once you are achieving at a very high level, there's going to be new challenges and
right.
new ways to interpret
There's
success.
a chart I saw, and it's like the confidence experience curve.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
That sounds familiar.
So it's wild. It's like confidence is the first chart,
okay.
and it spikes right at the beginning, and then it drops down and it's this big curve.
Okay.
And experience is just linear.
Yeah.
Flat. And it's like, right at the beginning, we have a spike in confidence because we're doing it. And then we start to realize how much we don't know.
And experience.
And it drops down and then, eventually finally goes back up. Yeah. I think so much of us, so many, especially people that are like pushing themselves, we live in the bottom trough of that confidence curve because we're, the experience is growing so much.
Yeah.
Like I'm always out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like whether I'm building a business or running an ultra or raising a family or whatever, I never have any idea what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have a clue about any of this, but I'm doing it. I'm going to make it happen. And I think that, you get to a level like that and you start to like, it's so easy to get humbled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, even though they're better, the self-doubt can creep in because now, the sphere of influence has changed.
Yeah. It's
totally different situation. And,
yeah,
you're used to winning all the time and now you're, average against everybody else. It's wild to think about.
I know. Yeah. Cause we picture them as just having all their X's, all their ducks in a row.
Right.
X and Y's there.
Do you think that psychology ties more directly into running than other sports?
Ooh, running's a little more individualistic. High school, college level, it's team oriented for sure. So, you might have more group psychology in other sports. Us runners have always said we had the hardest, since high school. But each sport has its unique demands. Taking a hit is no joke.
And no,
like, I dabbled in boxing last year and sparred a few times, and like I've been a runner because I've been a runner forever, and I've just always been intrigued by fight sports, and that's a whole other.
That would be fascinating to think about like if somebody who does what you do, but for like high level MMA fighters.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine the battles those? I didn't even think about that.
I mean, taking a hit and getting, and not any hit, like a hit, and then getting back up. Yeah. I mean, that's tough to, the thing running has that maybe demands a higher level of psychology is that you don't get breaks.
Right.
So there's just the battle doesn't turn off versus other sports. And that's, there's no timeout. There's not really catching your breath, for most racing,
Yeah.
So that's a very unique demand that maybe demands a tad more, where you don't get to go regroup and have coach give you an objective for the next play.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about, because which now I need to find, like, I would love to talk to like a combat sports psychologist, somebody who's like in the thick of it. But one of the things that I've loved, and it's been my whole life, whether it's in the most recent chapter, it's been, running for my adult life. But before that, I played college football and high school football and whatever. And so much of my best life lessons I've learned through sport. Yeah. And then, I get to turn around and apply them off the field or off the track or wherever.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about that? Like, why do you think, because if you think it's so funny, like my boys wrestle, which we could have a whole podcast on that, but we've been working on a lot of these things that you and I have been discussing today with them. Yeah. Like, they have to earn their medals. They don't just hand them out. And we've been focusing on effort over outcome. And if they try their hardest and have fun, that's successful, like, whatever. But all this stuff, it's been fun, a little microcosm.
That's cool.
But this tournament last Saturday, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this is so funny if you think about it. There's a bunch of just kids out there wrestling, and the parents are on the sides yelling, and it's like, you like took, and it's that way with most sports. Yeah. Like if you like took, all of it out of it and like really looked at it, it's funny. Yeah. Like what we do is funny as humans, that we have sports. Yeah. It's funny, but it's so not, it's so like profoundly impactful to our lives and, everything else. I'm curious your perspective on that, of like why sport is so important, to humans and evolution and whatever, and why you think we learn so many lessons through sport that we get to apply to our lives.
Yeah. Because on the surface, it seems like it should be absurd, right?
Absurd's a great word. Yeah. Like, almost silly.
Yeah. Like, why are we doing this? Right. Are you familiar with Viktor Frankl? No. Man's Search for Meaning? That's a must read. Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah. It sounds amazing. It's Viktor Frankl was a psychologist who survived the concentration camps in World War II. His entire family was killed. Down. He developed an existential therapy called logotherapy, and it was all about finding meaning, essentially. And he posited that we are just meaning-making creatures. So he noticed in the camps that those who found meaning survived at rates that those who didn't. Survived at much higher rates than those who didn't. So like if you found meaning and like you gave away some of your small ration of food or keeping your area clean, or it's a powerful book. It's definitely on my must. I always recommend it. Yeah. So he developed a whole line of therapy, or whole line of thinking, essentially. I mean, existentialism's been around a long time, but he kind of modernized it into, and in the 70s, he actually wrote about sport and that, a lot of our material needs were being met and food was more secure, and we, and that we are meaning-making creatures. So if we're not going to war or protecting our people, our tribe, our country, we're going to make meaning somewhere, he posited. And so these absurd competitions, which we just said are really not that absurd. They're like very human. And very meaningful. Yeah. So meaningful. I mean, we cry, we fight. I mean, we put money and time and an unbelievable amount of resources. Like they're not small things. They're not inconsequential. Like they're us living out. We have to craft. So basically, if there's not meaning to be crafted, we craft it. Mm-hmm. And for most of human history, we crafted it through protecting our local group, our tribe, and survival, and avoiding the lion and or bear. Like that's our meaning was survival essentially, and then lots of it's been through war. So and I think it perfectly describes like why we do sport. Like we're wired to create meaning. And the Romans did it too, right? Like the Roman Empire achieved some level of stability, and then they built the Colosseum.
Yeah.
They got after it,
we a while back, my wife and I toured some old Mayan ruins.
Oh, cool.
And it was the coolest thing. There was this, I forget what the sport was, what it was called, but it was sort of akin to basketball.
Yeah.
And it was on these like very steep slanted sides of a arena with concrete holes, sphere, not holes, holes. Yeah. Like sticking out of it. And they would run it like something similar to basketball where they'd have to get the thing but they would play to the death.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but wild, like, because I never thought about that. Like once you start to see established cultures, then sports kind of rise.
Yeah. Or we're crafting something through competition, through how you compete, honor and integrity, even though Romans talked, it wasn't just that you competed, but also how at some level,
So let me ask you this. Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think Frankel sums it up perfect. Like if we're wired to do these absurd events. They're not absurd though. They're
not.
Yeah.
They're very human. Right.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, if somebody's listening and let's say they're lacking meaning in their life.
Yeah.
Do you think sport is a feasible, like an actual realistic way to go find meaning in your life?
Yeah. This was my dissertation, actually, that question. So yeah, unprompted.
Yeah.
Just walked into it. So there are measures of meaning, and they're, taking a survey is not a perfect measure, but there are some pretty solid, statistically, sound ones that you can give. And we found that those who were engaged in athletic activities had higher levels of meaning in life than those who were engaged in non-athletic passions, curiosities. And then we looked at that compared with passion. So there's two kinds of passion in the academic. There's obsessive, which is like gambling, unhealthy, takes over your life. And then harmonious passion is like congruent with who you want to be. Doesn't mean you're not in on it. So harmonious passion also facilitated meaning in life fairly strongly. So if you're trying to create meaning in life, I just ask, like, what are you curious about? Like, what do you naturally enjoy doing? When I was coaching Fort Lewis, I feel like every third kid was studying business because their parents wanted them to, and they hated it.
Right.
And it's like there's no curiosity, no interest, no passion. And so sometimes they'd go switch majors, and I think it's wise to study some business on the side just because that's how the world works. But once they got into some, whatever we're curious about, like it's going to feel less like work. And when you're putting in a big night or studying for it, or it's going to, and our curiosities and our passions overlap. And so like, if you're passionate and curious about something, like so we have some data, I'm working on publishing it to like suggest that it's the first data that I know of that like suggests that like, or puts numbers to, we kind of know this.
Like, coming back to that theme.
Yeah. Sometimes
that we all know.
Academia is sometimes funny. We just put,
now we have to study.
Yeah, now we have the data. There's a lot of truths that we all know that we don't need a study to tell us that that's true.
But it helps.
Yeah, but it's not bad. So yeah, a harmonious passion, we have some evidence to suggest it will foster higher levels of meaning in life.
Wow.
So, like with data. So curiosity and passion, I think a lot of times we just forget those things, or maybe they get stamped out somewhere, or just those things kids naturally do it. Kids are like curious, and they fail all the time and get back up, and they'll try anything. And, some of that, or back to the boredom we talked about, like,
yeah, you don't have time to be curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And our attention is so occupied that there's no bandwidth here for it. Yeah. So
it's fascinating. So two things that you found through the study that lead to a more meaningful life: sport and healthy passion.
Yeah. And then
forget the word you had for it.
Harmonious
passion.
Healthy is a good synonym.
Yeah.
And then the surprising finding was people that listed 2 passions had the highest levels of meaning in life.
Fascinating.
Like 2 harmonious. So if it was like,
did you study how oftentimes the passions were sport?
Yeah. So that was we asked if it was a athletic related one or not.
Okay.
So sport related or not.
Okay.
So, and then sometimes they would put down too, they'd put soccer and fishing, and then their numbers for passion and meaning life were way higher than everyone else's. So like when people were curious about 2 things, so movement, sport was higher than non-movement, but then if somebody listed 2 that they loved, their levels were even higher.
Wow.
Which was super cool.
Yeah.
So we didn't really go in looking for that. So if I did it again, I would well, you don't want to prompt too much. I don't know, but we'd try and like double down on that. Like
try to unpack that. Yeah. Like what? Yeah. Cause in fact, but it makes so much sense. It's like you said, these things we all know.
Yeah.
But like, if you've got passions, you find meaning in your life, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of especially adult, like working professionals struggle with.
Yeah.
Like I even see it. Like I'm wired passionately.
Okay.
Like I'm just like, I joke with people that most human beings are a dial, 1 through 10. I'm a switch. Just on and off, like, rock and roll. But, which is a blessing and a curse. Nice. Whole other podcast for that. But even me, like by the time I'm a dad, I host a podcast. I own a company. Like, I very rarely have time for hobbies. Even running for me can switch into a thing on the to-do list rather than a passion
to check it out.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those things. So I think my point is I think that so many adults, we've got these busy lives, and what do we sacrifice? Our hobbies, which is probably our passions.
Mm-hmm.
Like all we do is we go to work Monday through Friday. We drive in traffic home and, do the thing and get ready for the next day and then do it again. You look back 10 years and, you wonder why you're feeling meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simple when we think about it, and it's easy for us to talk about, a couple of guys with the microphone, but it makes it clear. Like you've got to find room for passion.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to somebody who's listening right now and they're lacking meaning and they need to find some passion, like how would you coach them or advise them on starting that?
Yeah. It'd start with anything that's maybe been there before. These are the things that like make life kind of worth living.
Yeah.
If there's any inkling of like, oh, I started this, or I was curious about
wish I could do this.
Yeah. And then, fostering some level of, what's cool about therapy is like you've developed this trust and rapport where in the room where they can ideally take it outside. So like, with clients I've had before, you're like, they take that trust and that belief, and you're not telling them that they're going to make the MBA, because most of us won't. But like, so realistic. But like, there's usually, I say this all the time. There's usually low hanging fruit, like, and usually we don't see it. Usually we need someone else to notice it in our life. And so I'd ask them to like get into anything that's, maybe feels non-productive.
Right. Let it be.
Maybe the guitar felt like it was non-productive, or it wasn't, I wasn't going to be in a band. So what's the point? I remember that distinctly from one, like, well, that's not the reason you have, there's lots of ways you can play the guitar and love the guitar. And like, it's not necessarily for the feedback or or it got squashed somewhere, the interest, or
Yeah.
I always wanted to. That's a good question.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you're thinking about that. I would love to,
Yeah.
like that statement.
Yeah. And we don't have much time. Like,
Do it.
I've gotten caught up in dumb shit at work and whatever. Like, and maybe this is, I feel like everyone hitting 40 almost says this, but like, you don't want to waste time.
Right.
And so, you know, the long enough time or that exercise where you're talking about the future, I feel like can bring it like, you know, 10 years is not, dude, where do you want to end up? You know, because like you said, like, dude, it'll go by quick.
It flies by. Yeah.
Just going to work, going to, before you know it, we haven't done anything that kind of makes life fun or enjoyable or
Right.
meaning making,
Right.
challenging, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's another one I'm curious about too, is when it comes to that meaningfulness. And we talked about like real dopamine, you know, cheap dopamine, real dopamine or whatever.
Yeah.
Did your study or your dissertation have any insight into the effort behind I'm going to stick with my healthy passion. What did you call it?
Harmonious.
Harmonious.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to try to do that. But
no worries.
you know, as it relates to meaning, was effort a factor at all? Or do you think that's unrelated? Because it seems to me like we also have to do hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and maybe they happen at the same time or maybe they happen separately. But like when I look at my life, my happiest moments, definitely when I'm doing stuff I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
With people I love.
Yeah.
You know, outdoors usually.
Yeah.
You know, moving or whatever. But then there's this other weird category of like just the hard shit. Like the starting a business or raising a family, running an ultra, you know, like there's also these just like this whole bucket over here of the most challenging things that are also, though, I think have brought me the most meaning.
Yeah. Overcoming and setting a goal and achieving it. That's some real dopamine.
Right. So
Yeah.
do you think they're separate? I guess is my question. Like that we need to find we need to find passions and meaningful, challenging pursuits.
Yeah.
Or do you think they happen together?
I think the best ones we're doing with people we like and care about, if we can. I mean, running's somewhat solo.
Right.
You know, talking running today. I mean, you mentioned effort. The athletes we had were all college athletes, so there was an assumed level of effort that they had put in to be
that they're there.
The 4 or 5% that play in college. Yeah. So to answer that, you know, I think, you know, like you're talking about like the hard stuff over here, the gritty, unglorious stuff, editing, and I'm assuming, you know, like,
No.
you know, but then on this side, like with you mentioned outdoors, people, and
it's usually stuff I'm passionate about.
Yeah, stuff you're passionate about
with people I love,
and
outside, and usually some movement.
I mean, I think those are kind of fuel for this stuff, right? I'm kind of thinking out loud here, like, and you want to do some of that for them too,
right?
So you can go experience the outdoors more. So you can turn your phone off. So
yeah, that's a good point.
So you can be present with, you know, I mean, there are, like you said, there's realities that we all gotta suck it up on, you know, at some level. But when it's, you know, gosh, when we got something to look forward to and people we love and blue sky,
then it's meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody was telling me like, you got to find either God or spirituality, a project, or kids, like one of the three.
Yeah.
And I got to think of where I listened to that. And so you kind of put the, you know, the outdoors people project on that one side.
Right.
But those just, you know, anything also takes a crap load of work. You know? Right. Yeah.
What do you think about, so I'm curious, this is separate now, but you made me think about it. When I have a big goal, sometimes I'll put it out there on purpose.
Ooh.
Like when I ran my 100-miler, stopping was never an option. And one of the factors of it was because I had told so many people that I was going to run my 100-miler.
Yeah.
You know, like I had put it out there and I've heard some ultra runners talking about like, you need to talk more shit. Like you need to like, you know,
Yeah.
make it so that you have that accountability piece. But I'm curious, you know, from a psychology perspective of like pros and cons to voicing our goals with people, or like I'm saying I'm going to do this thing. Cause you know, we talked about that self-belief thing, and you had mentioned earlier, like, you know, people go in and say, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
And then they do, you know, or whatever. Like, and I was like, I'm going to run 100 miles. And I talked about it forever. On all my social posts and everything, like my training, I was very open about it. I'm like, I'm running 100 miles,
Yeah.
you know, and I had a lot of reasons why,
Okay.
you know, speaking it into existence, I think helped me a little bit. I don't think it was the main,
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Yeah.
you know, but I'm curious, like from your perspective with the people that you've worked with, or, you know, you're consulting or whatever, but the pros and cons to like putting it out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's an accountability thing or maybe it's a manifestation thing or whatever, I don't know. But talk me through that.
I like that. That's a great. I like that you did that. It's like putting extra skin in the game, kind of.
Yeah, that's a good.
And it's risking like feedback and, you know, comments, and
because now if I fail, it's a public failure.
Yeah.
You know, it's a private journey that now has a public failure component to it.
And when you're out, maybe should I get out today or not? That might help get you
right.
But I think you're also queuing up. I'm a person who runs 100 miles, like the manifestation you said. Like, I think there's some value into that. Like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and you're not putting I'm hoping to run 100 question mark or dot, you know, like it's
gonna try to no.
Yeah, I mean, you are setting and you're probably doing some like it's gonna hurt at this point, and it's gonna. I'm doing it. You got all your whys. There's probably a season 2 to talk less and, you know, act more.
Right.
I'm not saying one's right or wrong. Actually, I've been leaning more towards like, I think public goals are awesome. I love it when someone puts themselves out there. Like, that's freaking cool. Like, cause you're risking heat and you know, the comment age.
Yeah. One of the craziest ones I saw. Do you know Truett Haynes by chance?
Yeah.
Cam Haynes.
The pull-ups.
Yeah. So did you follow his pull-up story?
I saw enough of it, or it came into my feed. Yeah.
He
put it out there, right?
Yeah. So he went and got it. He did the world record like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember.
Okay.
And like 8 hours later, somebody broke it. Somebody beat it. Like he didn't even have it for a whole day. And it was a huge number. I forget what like 8,000, something like that. Yeah. And then someone broke it. And then he's like, I'm going to break it again. And it's gotten to the point now where like the number of pull-ups just sounds impossible.
Isn't it like 10,000 or
something? He did 10,001.
Jesus.
And he put it out there forever. But it was I've been fascinated with that because I've been watching it for a few years now of like, he did it. And then it was taken from him, you know, the next day.
Dang.
And then he just was like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to make it happen. And then he worked on it for a few years, you know, and failed, I think twice along the way, at least once that I can think of, and then did it. But that's one of those examples of like that public.
Yeah.
Like he, you know, and it seemed absurd.
Yeah.
10,000 pull-ups.
Jesus.
You know, I love that stuff though. Cause I'm like,
yeah.
And then, you know, speaking of like intentionally using our smartphones, but like following along with that's been so cool.
I mean, if we curate our feed right, I think it can be very inspiring and encouraging. Right. If we, you know, make the algorithm work for you. But yeah, like this winter, Yard Nagoose had the mile world record for like a day and a half, and then Jakob Ingebrigtsen took it from him. And what was cool is like 2 weeks later, Yard was like, I'm going to go try to get it back.
Yeah.
And I think everyone kind of respects, like, I'm putting myself out there. Like last year, Josh Kerr called his shot and was like, I'm going to break the 2 mile world record indoor. And he did, you know.
Isn't that wild?
And, you know, all these athletes take a lot of heat online because everyone's tough on keyboards, you know, behind keyboards. But I really respect that side of like,
there's something about,
have
you're going to know it better than I do. The guy who first broke the 4-minute mile. Yeah.
Roger Bannister.
And that was like untouched that year. If I remember right, like nobody had ever ran for a sub 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
And then he put it out there that he was going to do it. And everyone was like, it's impossible. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, your heart will explode.
Yeah. And then he did it.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Like 15 people.
A bunch of guys. Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
So You know, the flip side I'd say is, there's probably a season to just let action talk and like show and talk later too.
Right.
Like depending on the season.
Right.
Like, there's value to both, I think, and if you were like, I'm going to run 100 and set it all the time, but then never finished and didn't follow through on your goals, or I don't know, like
all of a sudden it loses some credibility.
Yeah. So like you fall like, but I think there's value to
see,
both.
like the guy, the name of the guy who broke the first 4-minute mile was his name?
Roger Bannister. Yeah.
Obviously he's physically talented. Like obviously, he's an athlete. But I think coming back to this idea of self-belief, I would speculate that people before him were capable.
Yeah. Yeah, no question.
Like I don't think he's the first human ever capable of it. Yeah. But I think he's the first human ever that believed he could enough to do it. And then because he did it, self-belief got instilled to everyone else. Mm-hmm. And then also we saw this influx of sub 4-minute miles.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Like a collective efficacy kind of.
Do you think that that's because of self-belief? Because we talked earlier on about that external, like building self-belief from like your personal wins or other people telling you that. But now I'm wondering if you could build self-belief by like, and I think actually now that I'm talking this through, I have some of that. I'm like, if that guy can do it, I can.
I've seen that with some of the runners that work.
I'm like,
they're like, I'm better than that guy.
Right.
They might not say it out loud, but they're like,
I'm at least as capable.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're going for it, then I better go for it.
Like it makes me wonder, like when I watch Truett Haynes doing 10,000 pull-ups, it makes me wonder how many I can do in a day. Yeah. I've never tried. Like I have no idea, but I think that that's why I think that 4-minute mile threshold is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it once it broke, it broke.
Yeah. The whole dam. We've kind of seen that the last few years in track. The times have really, from college to pro, there's people like what we thought was possible has been sort of rewritten.
Right.
Yeah. Like how casually guys are running, 346 miles now. And
why do you think that is from a psychology perspective?
I'd imagine there's some collective efficacy. The super shoes are real too, I think. Those were like the swimsuits in the Beijing Olympics that made everyone shatter records. So, but there's definitely it feels like there's kind of an iron sharpens iron. Because the times post COVID have just gotten, the sport's been kind of rewritten almost in track and field.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I could see some of that collective, like a collective. Well, this guy did it. The next week, I'm gonna go do that.
and it's almost because like it. Well, I think it's because in a weird way it contributes to self-belief. Yeah.
And I think the quality of coaching's higher. I think too now. Like the knowledge is democratized. Like I think when we were in high school, it's still you have to read books. You can get online now and read the training of,
you can know exactly what they're doing.
You can be, if you immerse yourself and have like a decent understanding of exercise phys already, like, so I think the quality of coaching across the board is it's higher than
right.
They're not pulling workouts out of Runner's World anymore. They're like, right. I don't know. Yeah. So, but a little of that collective efficacy is what comes to mind. Yeah.
There's an interesting thing happening right now which is it's a 300-mile ultra marathon.
Oh, okay.
So it's funny because we're kind of living on both ends of the spectrum, you and I.
Yeah.
Like, the speed world and the distance world.
Yeah.
But, similarly, the boundaries are being pushed on distances. So right now is the first year. It's called the Arizona Monster 300, and it's a 300-mile ultra marathon that 300 people, coincidentally, I don't know if that was intentional or coincidental, but anyway, the 300 people started on Saturday.
Wow.
And so they're like, as we speak,
yeah,
in the thick of it, and it's crazy because like 100 miles used to be impossible. And then 200.
Yeah.
And then, there's the Moab 240.
Yeah.
And, some of that stuff. But now there's a sanctioned 300-mile race that a bunch of people are signing up for. And it's just crazy to start thinking about like, just where the lines end for humans, or if they even do.
Yeah.
Because I think humans are capable of so much more than we realize.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. I feel like we're just not using as much of our potential.
No. Yeah. And then if, if you think about too, the modern you know, like now all the tools we've got now too,
Yeah.
you know, like they're talking about pros and cons of, you know, modern living.
I mean, the knowledge we have access to on these little devices is, I was just talking to Luna. I love my non-traditional students that are like 50 coming back to school.
Yeah.
And we were talking about encyclopedias and how it was like a status symbol to like buy encyclopedias. And that's where you went to like get your knowledge on a topic.
Yep.
If you wanted to learn about Peru,
a whole shelf.
Yeah. And you'd buy one at a time and because they were expensive.
Yeah.
And now we have like 10,000, 10 million probably on our phone. And
Yeah.
like the knowledge base and we're not using it.
Yeah.
All the time. Nothing wrong with cat videos, but like
might be some more productive uses for it though.
Yeah, our potential, like our capacity is probably higher. I agree with you completely on like as humans.
Yeah.
Like what we're capable of. Yeah, the ultra world's been rewritten too the last some years.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Over and over. And we're seeing it in every sport, in every, you know, humans are just remarkable.
Yeah, totally.
It's the coolest thing.
Yeah. No, I like following the ultra exploits. Like they're no joke.
No joke.
Yeah, I've dipped my toe in there before. And maybe will again, but
will you?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of big maybes there, but it's like I did a 50 years ago and I did Canyon de Chelly a couple of years ago, 55K.
Yeah.
I don't know. I certainly respect that it's a different kind of burn.
Right.
Than the hot burn. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what's worse though.
So, I don't know if you can compare.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You know, cause there's something about those intense efforts that just destroys me. You know, the hot burn, like you said, versus the slow simmer that is an ultra. I guess at least with like the shorter distances, it's over sooner, but the pain's more intense. Well, I don't know. I've been in quite a bit of pain at the end of ultra.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if comparing is an exercise that gets us too.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's probably not.
No. What I need to figure out is how to run far fast.
Yeah.
That's the trick, you know, for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then you can have a little less pain, get it done.
Exactly.
Be done sooner.
Right.
And what they're learning about fueling and ultra running and
wild. Like
the capacity, we used to have this understanding of like how many calories you could hold an hour and like that's been busted. And,
yep. Yeah. And now people are starting to play with more carbs and like the whole world's just, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. It's a fun time.
It's probably the equivalent of super shoes for ultras is nutrition.
Yeah. Hacking nutrition.
Yeah.
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 Because they're running fast.
Very.
For a long way.
It's wild. I actually have a packet. I'll geek out with you after, but I've got a packet. Tailwind just released their new high carb fuel. We did a little video for them, so I've got. Nice. You should check it out. But the things we can drink now is it's wild. So.
Yeah, and making it so you don't gag it like the old gels.
Right.
Yeah.
Josh, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving me some of your time, but also thank you for, sharing some of your insights and your perspectives. And I don't know, just the things that you're doing, I'm fascinated about. So I've got one of my Inspire by Example shirts for you as a gift.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think it's really cool how I just think it's neat how you're helping people harness the power of their mind, translate it into a physical endeavor, an athletic endeavor, but also a life endeavor and all of that good stuff. And so anyway, I want to thank you for it because it's inspiring and the world needs more of it. It's just fun. I could sit and talk to you forever. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it. Yeah. I think I could keep talking too. So appreciate you having me on. And I think shout out to all the people that let me work with them. Like I don't take that lightly, past and present,
Yeah.
That's a real gift to share the journey with some people. So
we'll have to do this again for sure.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.